Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. We're going to jump right into today's topic and talk about fashion and sustainability around fashion. We're going to probably get a little bit into supply chain and logistics. We're going to talk a little bit of what's happening around impactful materials and what's happening throughout fashion in general. We might even talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the digital world, as well as we have the new direct to avatar business model coming and seeing more marketplaces starting to come up around bringing fashion into the digital metaverse, as it's referred to as well. So stay tuned. We've got a lot for you here on VCTV today. Big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making today's episode possible. With that, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. Let's go ahead and jump in and introduce my co-host for today. Keith, welcome back to the show. A little intro, a little background.
Hey, great, Kyle. Good to be back. So I've been 20 years in sustainability in VC. Before that as an entrepreneur, but originally with Mitsubishi Corporation, then as president of BASF Venture Capital America, and then 10 years as a general partner at Pangea Ventures. Last year, I formed a new firm called Upper Stage Capital that is playing in the space in between VC and PE, where there's a lot of opportunities that are really under-addressed by both. My involvement in sustainability in fashion comes because Pangea's position as the leader in advanced materials venture capital. And I brought Adidas into the fund as a limited partner and worked closely with them, which led to me consulting to Fashion for Good and then speaking at Davos on sustainability and fashion last year.
Very cool. We got a lot to talk about. I want to hear a little bit more about Davos as well. Julio, welcome back to the show. A little intro, a little background, please.
Thank you so much. Great seeing you, Kyle. Hi, everybody. I'm Julio Marquez. I'm in New York City. And with some of my partners, I run New York Bay Capital. New York Bay Capital is an advisory company, but we also have an investment fund called New York Bay Blue. And almost since inception, several years ago, we have been investing and participating in the fashion industry. It's not the only thing we do, but it's become one of our specialties. It's an exciting time to be investing in fashion, and it's an industry a little bit under siege, accused of various unhealthy practices for the globe. But we're trying to do something about it. Personally, I'm also a member of the Harvard Business School Angels and of the MIT Angels. And I've been somewhat instrumental in making these more traditional type of institutions start looking at new industries where to invest. Not just do the tech thing, not just do the clean energy, but also look at fashion. And I hope to share some of my experiences as we speak.
Wonderful. Lastly, Gianpaolo.
Yes, Kyle, thank you. Welcome for having me here today. This is Gianpaolo Parigi. I'm an investor and an advisor, and being regionally Italian, I've been, of course, exposed and involved with the fashion industry on and off, especially as an investment banker for 2 decades. And I'm an impact investor. I believe in sustainability. I think that sustainability today is converging or merging with ethical fashion in this particular sector, silos. So I'm, really looking forward to our conversation today and giving my contribution.
So thank you very much to each of you. And Gianpaolo, why don't you kick us off? Talk to us a little bit about your experience and the work that you're doing here in fashion today as it's focused towards sustainability.
Well, I've been advising over the past decades. I mean, companies in the fashion industry, obviously Italy and France have, these companies just round every corner, from the brands, luxury brands that everybody knows to, smaller nano cap and micro cap companies that are maybe delivering specific products or services in this vertical silo. And I have seen the world, the fashion evolving And I find it now very interesting to maybe cite you research that has been published recently, and 60% of the Italian consumers are thinking that the luxury brands are not doing enough in terms of sustainability. And of course, they do not necessarily refer only to the Italian luxury brands. When the survey was including luxury brands from all over the world, and over 60% of the respondents have determined that they do not believe that the manufacturers are doing enough on this topic. And I think that sustainability, again, is going to go pari passu with the ethical commitment. And ethical commitment, let's define it once and for all, has to do primarily with setting up manufacturing operations in developing countries or regions where the people should not be abused, and the labor force should not be abused, and the rights of the labor force should be respected, and everybody should be paid a fair compensation to begin with. And secondly, the environment workplace should not be pollutant for the workers and pollutant for the environment around them, or the environment at large. I think the growing awareness that we see. I remember already back in the 90s in Europe, we were not buying a certain number of sports manufacturers' gear, playing football, soccer for the Americans, because some of these products were manufactured in parts of Southeast Asia where they were employing child labor. And obviously there was a big reaction in Europe against those brands back then already. And we're talking about over 25 years ago. So I think that this is a sign of the times that have finally changed. And I think now there's a nearly universal awareness onto these topics. And there are companies that are, recycling also, creating products with a view to having the products recycled, nearly completely into the system with a circular economy. Benetton is doing products that are recyclable up to 80%. There are some other companies that are even better than him around the world. And Nike, I think it was about 50% on some products. Everybody's trying to go there, and slowly but surely, possibly, also this goal will be achieved. So I think, we see a convergence of different items. So the ethical, and look what's happening with the Uyghur in China, and, the turbulence that some of the, most important stocks, even on the American Stock Exchange, had as a result of the Chinese public had fallen out of love with those brands because, they were thought to use in the land of cotton people that were employed in labor camps by the Chinese authorities, particularly people of Muslim heritage. So there's a lot that is happening in the world, and it's really, we're seeing a convergence of ethical, a convergence of sustainable, and a convergence of recyclable. And the fashion industry is a prime candidate for this experiment. And I think we should be all really excited, because we're going to keep having very good quality products, but with the lesser of an impact on the planet and on its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Gianpaolo. Keith, to you, are you seeing a similar trend? I mean, having worked with the Adidas family as an LP, but also having worked much in this area as well, are you seeing something similar? Or what are your views on where we are when it comes to sustainability and fashion?
Gianpaolo summarized the trends quite well. Yes, all of these things are in play. But the problem is not just what is possible, but what is economic and what is actually convenient for both consumers and for the retailers. And it's at the retailer side that we particularly see things falling down. Although, of course, cotton fibers are recyclable, and many of the plastics are recyclable, but expensive to recycle. And I've talked about that before, and I will talk about it more here. But let me make this point here. Retailers have put up a window dressing saying, "Oh, we care about these things." H&M has got a box for collecting your clothing. That it will then be either passed on to someone in perhaps in a community in need in your own or in your own country, or maybe shipped to some other country, or they will be recycled. But the insider reports are quite damning that the vast majority of that clothing is landfilled or burned. It does not go to the stated goal that H&M and other people, that I don't mean to single only them out. There are lots of groups that are doing this kind of window dressing but not following through. And a lot of that has to do with the cost and convenience. It's not easy. There's effort, and you have to pay people to make those efforts in order to make this possible. So although the general sentiment from consumers and from corporations is trending in the directions that Gianpaolo quite nicely explained, there is still a lot of resistance around cost. And I believe at the heart of that is that there is an unwillingness to acknowledge the true end-of-life cost on the items that we use every day, because not only does that mean we're going to have to pay more for them in the future, and none of us want to think about having to pay more for things in the future, but also because there's a complicated emotional response to how we've behaved in the past, and start to realize, oh, there was enormous cost. We lived with privilege. You see people fighting against this concept of privilege now that it's coming into the mainstream consciousness. And a lot of it is because people don't want to admit that maybe their own self-narrative is not as not as victim-like as they perceive it. And more that we've all been exploiting our environment and other people on this planet to live as richly as we have, and we need to start to build that in. I think there's a willingness to move towards that, but the retailers are where I would point to in sustainability, not the people like Adidas and Nike and Benetton, who are committed here in their manufacturing process, but more on the actual interface between those brands and the consumers that buy them.
Thank you, Keith. Julio, you've already unmuted, so you know I'm coming to you next. Anything to add to Gianpaolo and Keith, but also your view on this industry and where things are?
Well, the discussion between Gianpaolo and Keith was so good. I think they could have just gone on. And I'm just learning. What I think about after I listen to them both is that this is an industry with a problem, right? And the problem, I think, can be solved to some extent with things like curation and certification. I mean, how do you make it? The trends are there, but there's resistance. How can we really make it easy for the consumer to help drive the change? I think this is a consumer-driven type of change. It's the consumer that would like to be wearing something that hasn't harmed the environment in its production, or that wasn't produced exploiting somebody on the other side of the world. And so to some extent, it's a kind of a user-driven phenomenon. The people who protest about social conditions are the same people who don't want to be wearing something that, for which they could feel guilty or attacked. So we've been focusing on investing in businesses that help help that process of the consumer drive the change. The large corporations like H&M, I mean, they're not going to necessarily be driving anything unless the consumer really demands it, and they demand the proof. There are certifications out there that I think are becoming more sought out. Things like Fair Trade, GOTS, Blue Sign. There's something called B Corp. There are various certifications by, what I guess we could call, independent, credible, perhaps impartial organizations that are out there, trying to trying to signal what kinds of things to do for the consumer. And there are some companies, like one of our investments is a company called Wearwell. In Wearwell really does a curation type of activity. They don't produce clothes, but they go around selecting suppliers and designers that really commit to being sustainable and obtain these types of certifications. And so then you can go to them and at least feel like if you buy through them, you can trust them to take care of the details, which you don't see when you buy clothing. You have no idea really who made it and where and how, and whether they were paid a fair wage or not. So that's one thing that I think as an investor, it opens up an opportunity, right? To look at those intermediaries, curators, etc., that are going to help channel the pressure from the consumer into something more tangible than just relying on the statements that are often just marketing, from large companies. We also, with technology, of course, can help ease the transition. Another of our investments, a company called Katla with a K, it's an Icelandic design company. They've actually designed garments that can be manufactured very quickly, so that inventory can be reduced. You don't have to have all the inventory ready. Now the consumers are used to ordering online and then waiting a little bit to get to their clothes. It's not really the same impulse purchase that you had when you went to a store and you wanted to go out of the store with the garment. Now it's okay to wait a few days. So in that window that the consumer has opened up, where they're willing to wait a few days, just because it takes time for Amazon or whomever to deliver the garment, you can actually manufacture a garment. You don't have to have the inventory. You can manufacture on order. And that is something that Katla has become really good at. Now, you can't manufacture everything on order with zero inventory, but if you, at least not current designs, but if you start designing garments so that they can in fact be manufactured quickly, then that's a big contribution that technology can make. One more of our investments is called Colectiva Concepcion. This is a company that has luxury fashion made by indigenous people in Latin America, mostly Mexico, and that one on its website gives you a lot of information and allows the consumer to really track things from the moment that they were produced all the way to the store. The consumer knows, even the name of the individual that was involved in the manufacturing, and the location, and where how the garment was built and transported and ended up at Bergdorf's, right? So giving the consumer information is another way to help have the impact that we all want. And therefore, it's an exciting time to invest. So, we look forward to more companies like that.
Keith, I saw you shaking your head. Anything to add? And if not, I've got a question for you, but anything to add?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, Julio points around transparency throughout the supply chain. It really resonates with me. I love that, and it does make me think of one of my portfolio companies is TrueTag, that have a they have these microparticles, nanoporous microparticles that are edible. They're made of silica, so sand. They're edible, and they can be embedded into anything. But the edible part is really cool because it can go into food. Totally different topic, because generally we're not eating what we wear. But the nice thing about this is that it's scannable with your smartphone, and you don't have to point it at a barcode or something printed or anything like that. In the actual product, you can point this at your shirt or your shoe or whatever, and then it will reach, just like looking at a QR code, except it's the actual item itself. You know that specific item, how it flowed through the supply chain, where it came from, everywhere along. And if there was, this is not really going to happen in fashion too much, but if there was a recall, you would get notified about that. If it is a knockoff, right, it won't work, because these particles are very, very specifically coded, something like 10 to the 36, 39 combinations. It's it's very specifically coded. So I'm really excited about opportunities like that, to have transparency throughout the supply chain, from manufacturing, provenance, where do the materials come from, are those facilities rated for ethical treatment of their workers and environmental treatment, etc. We're just getting into an era right now with TrueTag and other technologies as well, and blockchain can play a role here for sure, that we can have that transparency. A consumer can say, I care about this, show it to me. When I went to buy a suit to give my talk at Davos, I had so much problem going to any suit manufacturer and say, what I really care about is sustainability. I'm going to be up there on stage. I need to walk the talk. I'm really scared somebody is going to recognize whatever it is I'm wearing, and they're going to say, oh, this came from X place, and it was very unethical treatment of their people, or very bad for the environment, and I can't have that. But nobody, I mean, really nobody was able to give me visibility into, some were able to tell me where their wool or other materials came from, but nobody was able to tell me about the dyes. Nobody was able to tell me, there were whole gaps in supply chain information for any of them. They would know in the end who sewed together those particular pieces of material, but as for who touched them in between, it was completely unknown. In the end, I concluded that the suit that was already hanging in my closet was more sustainable than getting another one made. And so that's what I did.
All right. Thank you. And Gianpaolo, coming to you next, looking at the opportunities in the industry and where we can start placing our bets and or building as entrepreneurs. What are your thoughts on where we should be starting? And then, where can everyone find you online to continue the conversation as well?
Yes. I think, I would work along those three drivers that I just mentioned before. Companies that are in the position to demonstrate prospective investors that they are going to not only paying a lip service, like Keith correctly pointed out, but actually they are executing on good governance and good policies, should be trading at a premium and should attract more interest by the investors. Although I would like to point out, coming back again to what Keith said, that I think the bottleneck is at the retail level. So possibly we should find ways to make the retail more aware that just paying lip service on those items that we're discussing today is never a good policy. And ultimately, the consumers may punish you for that attitude. I'm Gianpaolo Parigi. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and here at LATOKEN, and via email on gianpaoloparigi1@gmail.com. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Gianpaolo. Julio, to you, areas of opportunity, and then where can everyone find you and New York Bay Capital as well?
Well, as I said, New York Bay Capital is in New York City. Although we have presence in, we specialize in Latin America. So we have presence in most Latin American countries. It's easy to find us at nybaycapital.com. And me on LinkedIn, as long as you put the A in the middle. My middle name is Julio. My middle initial is A. And there are many Julio Marquezes. So Julio A. Marquez will yield better results on LinkedIn than just the average Julio Marquez. Areas of opportunity, well, as I said, materials. We were looking just a few months ago. We didn't proceed, but at a material that is made of basically grass, of green materials, literally, which is more like a fiberglass type of concept, where you no longer have to have yarn or thread and then make the thread into fabric with a loom, which is the typical way. But that, if you think about it, it's so much energy, first in making the strings, and then you have to loom them, and then you have the fabric, and then when you cut the fabric, you have so much waste. This technology produces like a green material made up of fibers that go in various different ways, kind of like fiberglass, and then you can stamp that whole thing in a machine and make a t-shirt, at least the front end of the t-shirt, the back end of the t-shirt, and then you can glue them together. No more sewing. It's a great concept. It's going to take a long time for these to really develop into viable products, but there's a lot of venture capital going into the research of new materials. There's no real reason why cotton needs to continue to be the fabric of choice, or the way that, or wool, that things are made in the future. There's so much richness in plants that you can come up with different ways. That's just one way of investing. There are others. If any of our viewers have an interesting company, we'd love to hear from you. That's why we're here, and that's why we give out our LinkedIns and our websites, because more than anything, we want to hear from new companies, new ways of solving problems, and we will figure out a way to get them the capital they need.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julio and Gianpaolo. Lastly, Keith, any areas of opportunity additionally you want to mention for those you already have, but then also where can everyone find you in Upper Stage Capital as well?
Sure. You can follow me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best place. Upperstage.capital is my website, but it's still very stealthy. And also you can follow me on Clubhouse, where I'm quite active. I just came off hosting Corporate Venture, a group which we do every Tuesday. I host a Wednesday Canadian Venture Capital and Private Equity Club, and there's for those interested in sustainability, we have a climate book club on every Saturday morning Pacific time. We just finished this book. There's the first half of this book, There Is No Planet B by Mike Berners-Lee. The first half I recommend. A lot of great information specifically around sustainability, dealing with supply chains, etc. The back half of the book gets into some very judgy cultural kind of things where I don't believe the opportunities lie. My background, I'm very bullish on the ability for materials, both bio-based and chemical, to make a huge transition in fashion and other industries towards a very sustainable, enjoyable world where we will all prosper.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Gianpaolo, Keith, Julio, for your thoughts and insights around the industry of fashion, sustainability, even bringing blockchain into that as well. To the audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard, make sure you click subscribe, like, and share today's episode. Check out the archive on LATOKEN.com to hear from all of today's speakers and the entire VCTV family of investors from around the world. We all would love to hear from you, as Julio mentioned, about what you're building in, whether it be in fashion, fashion, blockchain, or many other industries that we're all focused on as well. So please do reach out to each and every one of us. Please add context where you heard us, where you met us, and what you would like to continue the conversation about. With that being said, everyone have a wonderful day. A big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making today's episode possible. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for more. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Kyle.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, everybody. Bye.